that by the time you build the structure, um, it is completely too expensive, and it doesn't really fit the application. So we thought about what's the most mechanically simple way. We like Occam's razor, where the simplest explanation tends to be the best one. And we found a way to do this. And there was a company overseas, but the price that they wanted for it per parking spot just didn't even make any sense. And we looked at the materials that are involved and the way they were approaching it, and we found a way of probably cutting that cost way down. We think we can build 100. Well, per parking, these guys are charging anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000. There's just no way you can make money like that. We think we can get this price way down, and for a typical parking garage, just to accommodate 100 cars, you could be looking like 25 million for a robotic parking solution. We think we can get that cost to well under 10 million. And the good thing is you never have to worry about theft. You don't have to worry about employees. This thing is fully automated. The robots don't take a vacation. They don't unionize and demand higher wages. All you have to do is pay for the electricity. We've even got some methods with the system where, because we're going to be using gravity to move the cars downward, we actually can use part of that to generate electricity that can be stored or sold back to the grid, and then we can repurchase it back at a rate similar to what we're selling it to them. And so this help offset the cost of operations. But let me just show you. And if you have any questions or anybody want to jump in, Jim, especially if you want to add anything,
Yeah.
no problem.
One thing I'd like to say is this project I was talking about. Well, I live in a small town in Southwest Colorado that you guys maybe have heard of it. It's Durango. It's got a narrow gauge train. It's a tourist mecca, sort of. Our project was the first one in that town to be approved for car lifts, to lift cars so you could park 2 cars in one spot. And so they've already gotten, used to the concept of this kind of thing going down the road. So, and that we had to do that in order to meet the parking requirements for our project. So this is really interesting.
Okay, let me show you another company's solution, and I appreciate that. Again, the municipalities around the country are being led by people that are lacking technical knowledge, and they're waiting for somebody to come show them the solution. And I think we have the solution here. The other thing which makes this sustainable is that we can bring that cost way down, and we have a strategy of how we want to implement. So Jim, make sure to remind me to tell them the financial strategy of how we'll actually, instead of selling these things, we can partner with parking lot groups around the country. But let me just show you how this works, and then we'll come back to that. All right, so this is the vertical risers and the horizontal structures with the trigonal supports for rigidity, and what this is, you can see the little skids, the little platforms. Each one of these is assigned to a car, and so when the cars come, this is below grade, and this you see right here is above grade, and this is the main chasm that they all come down. And it's designed for these to see these greenish yellow, optical yellow. It's almost like a carousel that goes round and round, and then each of the skids that you see here that the cars will be sitting on go up and down on these, and then they move sideways. And you basically puzzling in cars based upon what needs to be optimized. And so the cars will enter in from the ground floor, right, the ground level. And keep in mind, with this structure, we could either build a structure below grade and come above grade. We can start above grade and go all the way up, or we can do a combination of below and above. So it just depends on what the water table is like, wherever the application would be installed, and then also what space requirements are, what space is available there. So, but I'll show you how we'll be able to maximize space here. So the car enters in, and ideally we want to do this with an app rather than have a panel, but we'll have a panel there where somebody can swipe a credit card if necessary. And so this is the point. This is the point where things would be slow, but if everybody has an app, we can actually give them a discount for having an app. Without having an app, we got to charge them extra. Why? Because it's holding the other cars up. But you see how it's going up and down on the platform? And then once it gets into position, then it slides the whole platform. And you can actually, there's a process, be able to sort and order these things so that there's no gaps or spaces between these. And we've actually made some modeling changes as to how we're going to approach this so that there is never a gap there. It doesn't have to be. And where the skids are there, the skids are only introduced when cars are entered in. And the skids are all maintained above grade. And as soon as the cars come in, it's assigned a skid, and then the skid moves them around. And it's kind of a coordinated dance, but this is what computers are good for. Let me show you our solution and how we're going to be doing this. All right, so each one of these skids, this is not designed in particular for SUVs, large SUVs, mid-size to small size, yes, but not the longer excursions. And the only reason is because it's going to cost us a lot to be able to accommodate them. And as far as we're concerned, they'll have to find parking somewhere else. But the idea is we want to be able to maximize on a given footprint the amount of cars that can be parked. So,
but Hans, you can also expand it in areas that SUVs are, you know, the bigger part of the population. So is
sure.
that?
Yeah, let's come back to that. There's always possibility when Jim's writing the check. All right. If the more you're ready to spend, the more we can do, but there's a cost to, you know, the airlines are charging extra for individuals, and they're gonna start weighing people, which is just, it's just crazy that we're coming to this. But the reality is there's an economics to size and volume, and if you treat every vehicle the same, you're going to be the loser in the end. You're better off going where 90% of the vehicles out there are not the supersized SUVs. They're the mid-size to smaller SUVs, and every car below that in size. So if we can accommodate that, we're solving a major problem. And by the way, if we get more cars in parking lots like there, there's going to be more space for the oversized pickup trucks and oversized SUVs to park anyway. So the traditional parking will be able to accommodate them. So if we're able to get the other ones out of the way, let's say. Okay, so this structure is designed to be modular. We're basically going to dig a hole in the ground, right? Or if it's surface, we just basically pour footings, and just like you would build a building, we'll have to do pile drivings because we got to support a lot of weight and caissons. And then from there, we build our structure going up, pour concrete with rebar, and then we're able to set our structural steel and go up vertically and horizontally. So if you look from the side, let me go from this side here and consider this box gone. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Okay. You would enter in from the right side, and then this would either shuttle out straight ahead, going this direction, or it would drop down a level where it can be sorted in the matrix that it could be sorted in. From the side here, this is 17 feet. So this will accommodate almost everybody's car that's on the call right now. But if you got a longer one, obviously, that's another discussion for another application. When the car initially comes into the center and their intake by either electronically or by credit card with the panel that will be on the wall, the car goes in, they step out of the car into a little waiting room area so they don't have to be in the rain or the snow. The door shuts, the garage door shuts. Once it acknowledges that there's no other life forms, dogs, cats, people in the vehicle, in the trunk, will have sensors to be able to detect that. It would then assign a skid where that skid will move robotically through this lattice structure in this grid system. So they'll be able to move vertically down the sides, up and down, but they'll be able to move laterally. And once you're on the same level, and the pieces basically puzzle themselves out, and we'll have an algorithm to be able to, with actuators, to make sure that they move nice and smoothly. Each of these skids themselves have no controls on them. They're just designed to float along a rail system. The actuator is actually built into this grid system. That's how ours is proprietarily different. This is why it will be absolutely silent. There will be no noise. It'll be on smooth rollers, and these things will move the cars. Once they're in position, they lock into place. In California, we have seismic activities. We want to make sure that the cars aren't affected by the seismic activities. And the way the treads are designed on here, there would be kind of like if you can see it, it's kind of like shaped and curved, so it helps cradle the vehicle that's sitting in place. So if we wanted to go deeper, if we wanted to go wider, it's just a matter of adding a vertical component to it. And each of these will be 21 feet. So we can stack these all on top of each other. And from our statics calculations, we should be able to go 10 of these systems high if we really wanted to. So that could be 5 below grade, 5 above grade. So if you look at how it's structured, we can have, just in this little setup right here, we got 3 going this way. And here, let me do it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. So 18. So 36. You kind of get the point. You can add onto these very quickly and increase your density. However, if this were a regular parking space in the same amount of space, you'd be challenged to fit, I don't know, 15 cars in there. The problem is with a parking structure, you're losing a lot of space in the curve because the cars have to be able to swing around corners, and cars are going to be running into each other. There will be none of this. They'll be very closely packed next to each other. So it's a very space-saving, very efficient packing process.
No ramps.
What's that?
No ramps.
Yeah, no rats.
Oh, rats are. Oh, don't ever say no rats. Rats are a part of everything.
No, ramps.
Oh,
Like
ramps. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Ramp.
no need for ramps any longer. This is the future of parking.
Yeah.
And by the way, in Dubai, New York, LA, here in Detroit, we have a lot of robotic parking garages. Those structures are so incredibly expensive. They're trying to figure out, does this even make any sense? Well, we now will have a solution that will make this make more sense. And I think there's a lot of money to be made with this. We think we can develop completely R&D end to end for about $2 million, where we won't need any money to do anything. But we're not going to do that. We're going to raise $5 million. We're going to provide equity to whoever puts the money up. And each system, I think the best way to approach this is to say, have somebody put up, let's just say an application will cost 10 million to do. Because our competitors 20 million, we're going to tell them to put up to 10 million. We'll install and apply and put this system in. We'll do all the construction. They'll pay us the 10 million. we can literally go 50-50 with the parking lot group. That's gonna, and because everything's gonna be automated, we don't need as far as partnership goes, we don't need the same accounts. We can have separate accounts, and those funds will be distributed to the respective partners. So it could go into one company's account, or it can be divided up. We got credit card processing merchant accounts already. It's costing us about 1.5% to process, which is very, very cheap. We got a lot of the solutions that need to happen. We just need the monies to go ahead and start the R&D process beyond the simulation phase. And what we would do is get the first block of this to work, prove that it actually works, figure out what we didn't figure out before, and then figure out how we need to scale. And we kind of just about already got that worked out. One of my engineers is a young graduate from MIT. He's working on his master's right now at Michigan in robotics engineering. And he and I have been working very closely. We have 4 engineers total working on it. And everybody's very excited about it. But again, the only money is going into this right now is my own. And we'd like to raise the funds and go to work and just work on this full time until we have it. All the apps, everything will come included and completed, and we can begin installing these systems. Another thing Jim and I have talked about, because it's modular, we could bring these things on trucks. So when there's a Super Bowl or a large event, we can literally bring a parking structure on semi trucks or trains, and we can unload it, and we can literally put a parking lot on top of a parking lot, increasing it. We can quickly make 1,000 parking lot out of a parking lot that was only like 120. So these are some of the things, and if they decide they want to keep it, we just keep it. But all kind of arrangements can be made, and because we're making it modularly, we don't have to worry about any maintenance issues. If there's a problem, we literally snatch out the entire section and replace it with a working section, and take the non-working section back to correct it to be redeployed or reinstalled somewhere else. So this is the approach that we're going for, and we probably got about a year worth of R&D work, but we think we'd have a working prototype by summertime.
I would love to see that. If indeed you have a working prototype, where would it be located?
It's going to be here in Michigan.
Okay.
But we can take it anywhere. And again, the only part where we're at right now, it's the funding. The funding part is the part that we want to address and make sure we can kind of go full bore. I wouldn't mind paying the engineers if I have to, but nobody's working for free today, and everybody wants equity on top of that. But it's just kind of the thing you have to do if you want to have top-notch talent working on things. So, but like I said, if we can raise 5 million, I think this is something that can make an awful lot of money. Can you tell me what parking is going for in your neck of the woods?
JT?
We have a 21 space parking lot, and we rent our spaces for $60 a month.
$60 a month. Okay. That's wow. That's just come as much as you want for $60.
Well, we rent them to individual people. They're not assigned per se.
okay.
It's just take the spaces that are available, and we leave one extra as a clutch.
Yeah.
But man,
JT, if you built a structure like this, you would charge more for the people that are coming into town that need it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me tell you what's been going on in some of these major cities like Seattle, Toronto. We parked at a place in Toronto. It was $175 for a full day. I was like, what? During events here in Detroit, they're getting up to $70, and the people are in and out in 3 hours. All of our stadiums are right. This building that we have, Edmond Place, if you're not familiar here, is right in the throes of where the Pistons, the Red Wings, the Tigers, the Lions,
In the new soccer team.
yeah, it's and a new soccer team. And so these events, sometimes there's 2 or 3 events going on in one day. So so you raise the price for that stuff, and the people are paying for it because, you know, it's just something they're doing because they want to go to these events and they don't want to walk a mile. We have the rail line here, and there's parking opportunities, but for some reason, people still just want to be so close to the venue. By the time they leave, they can just go straight to their car and leave. But if we had parking for just 100 cars at $50, that's $5,000. That's a 3-hour span for a game, and the next game may come in. That may be $10,000 in one day. But
Yeah.
what if we only got $20 times 100 times 30 days? That's 60 grand a month times 12. That's $720,000 a year. And there's nowhere to park down there for $20. Nowhere. They have parking that is like $17.50 for the first half hour. And then they have another, but I don't even know why they do that. They should just say all day parking this amount. But I guess some people want to get in and out. So that's what they're doing. But it's kind of like it feels like a trick bag to me.
Downtown Denver, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
and it's a situation on the Edmonds property too, that you've got a lot of condominiums around it. And with all those condominiums, it's virtually street parking. So, you know, they're being kicked out. They have to drive around. And this is typical in every major city, even Durango. The locals have to drive around to find a place, while those that come in for the games or come in for whatever it might be, take all the spaces. And something like this allows the residents at least to park in front of their house or their condo or wherever it is. In Detroit, as an example, they'll designate streets for those that live there so that nobody else can park. Well, now those that come into town need to find additional parking, and that's what this is. And they're willing to pay more. So, you know, you're going to be averaging somewhere around $40 a car a day in places like Detroit, in like the Edmonds property. So, you know, you start looking around at these things, JT and Catherine, and, you know, you start placing these in local cities. And this could be easily $1 billion business, very, very quickly for those that, you know, decide that this is what we want to do and this is, you know, how we want to do it. So for us, it's exciting. I love what Hans has done and his engineers. It's, you know, it's the old adage, keep it simple, stupid. And that's exactly what, you know, all of this is about. And the cash flow is phenomenal. I know here in Durango, we can't really go underground because we've got radon and everything else. But in Detroit, like the Edmonds property, we can go down 5, 6 floors, depending on, you know, hitting water or something else. And then we can either go up or you put condominiums on top, you do something else and you make additional revenue. I mean, it's a huge, huge concept.
Yeah.
So Jim, you're in Durango?
Yeah.
So you understand.
I
You know
live
what
off the 245.
So you know what the planners are planning with their new urban deal downtown that's wiping out parking spaces. That's irritating everybody. And
Yeah.
that just makes this more workable, you know? Okay, so do you know where the Bank of Colorado is on the corner of 12th and Main?
Yeah.
Okay, we own from that south wall of the bank, from Main back 105 feet, 75 feet wide. And then the remaining 95 feet's 100 feet wide, where that
Okay.
rock building is just north of the 11th Street Station deck.
Okay,
That's where our multi-use project was proposed. I can easily see something like this going there instead, because that's
Oh,
right
yeah.
in the downtown.
oh, absolutely. And Catherine, do you have any questions or thoughts on what's going on?
I think this is a very lucrative thing to do and it's very smart. Parking is going up everywhere. I know for the Super Bowl here in Arizona, it was ridiculous to park.
And
And
how far away?
well, the area for the stadium was definitely full, but there is a strip mall across the street from it, and there is a condo complex on the other side of the street. So people were parking there as well and walking across the street. So
Yeah. And that's, to me, that's what's so exciting. I mean, we get involved in doing this, and I mean, I'm excited because Durango, I'd love to see, it put together and work as a sample for the rest of the country. And Edmonds, downtown Detroit, we can go both down and up. And it's incredibly exciting to be able to see how this will solve parking issues everywhere. I mean, Durango's a little town. Detroit's a big town. Phoenix is a big town, but Phoenix has its issues. San Francisco, LA, just start going across the country, everywhere. It's crazy. So to me, it's exciting, and I'm excited to see it in both places because there'll be how do you even say it? I mean, there'll be examples for the world, quite frankly, because it can be done so so cheaply and so efficiently. It's incredible. Did I put everybody to sleep?
No. So Hans, do you have like some sort of prospectus or some package that could be emailed to us to look at?
Not just yet, because we're all Americans here. We got a couple of things we have to kind of make sure we're good with. One, I just need to know we have qualified investors. We got to follow regulation D 504, 505, and 506, depending what would be applicable. Because we're raising a significant amount of money, we're going to probably need a private placement memorandum. So before I make the actual offering to make it available so that you can place, we need to have a full disclosure on the private placement memorandum, which basically says it's risky, it could be illiquid in nature, and you could lose all your money. All this stuff is just part of the standard disclosure. Otherwise, it could be problematic later. But we just want to make sure we're following all the guidelines.
But as we were speaking earlier, if you can just kind of go over figures, thoughts as to what these things can generate, as we talked.
Oh yeah,
and I think that's what you're looking for, at least right now, JT. Is that correct?
Yeah, just
okay. And Catherine, the same thing.
Yeah. So here's how we would make money. If we're going to put in, let's just say 100 parking spaces, and if we were looking at, let's just say, a rough cost of about, let's just say $50,000 per parking space. Now, listen, that's building the entire structure. That's not just putting the robotic system in, right? We wouldn't make this available to a customer. We would charge them $10 million because they would spend 20 million for the same application. So we would charge them half. One, we make $5 million in profit from what our costs were from construction and development and engineering. On top of that, we would take a percentage equity. They would supply the dirt. We would come in, dig up, build the place, but they'd be spending the money to do that. And then we'd stay on, even if we were 50%, we could say 30%. Because it's saving them so much money, and they couldn't get it done for less than 20 million under the best scenarios. They'd be spending 10 million, but then they'd have to take us on as a partner. And so what you would be investing in is you'd be investing in the future opportunity of generating the 5 million for each one we install based upon 100. And in addition to that, we would make a percentage of the take after expenses. So obviously there's going to be a fair amount of electricity to be used at each location. But as these cars are parking and starts generating money, we'll have reports that will hit your iPhones and your Androids, and you'll be able to log in at will. You have an app, you'll be able to look and see what are we doing in Phoenix? Oh, that's going great in Phoenix. What's going on in Denver? Oh, it's going great in Denver. What are we doing in LA? Oh, they're not online yet. Okay, we'll check back. But the idea is that all the partners that invest will get updates as the status of this going. But I'll tell you, the demand for this is far greater. All they need to do is know we're there, and they're going to come with the money ready to go. And
one question, Hans, on that. For those that decide to fund this, it's not going to cost 10 million to put it in. Am I correct? I mean, in those
it'll
cases,
cost about 5 million. But what we're doing is we're going to give them the application for roughly half of what our competitors would be doing. So if a structure is going to cost 20 million to build, see, a lot of what we're building is just a sarcophagus. We're digging out a big hole. We're putting rebar structure in. We're setting forms, and we're pouring concrete and compacting concrete, and and with footings and caissons and pile drivings, the whole nine. Other than that, the steel structure just gets lowered down into the ground by crane. Once it's dropped in place, we lock it in, we supply power to it, and then we begin the process of PLC coding, deploying the code so that the system will be ready to go online, and then we'll do a mechanical test. Everything's all set, we're ready to go. Then we just put a lid on the top of it, pour the concrete, and we're ready to do whatever we're going to do above it, whether we're going to build a building above it or we're going to continue with more parking coming out of the ground. But the idea is if our cost was 5 million to build the structure and the construction, we can charge them 12 million. They'd be happy with that. And even if we took 30% equity on that project, how could we lose?
I guess what I was more getting at on that, Hans, is, let's say Catherine and her group buy Edmunds and decide to fund this project, or JT decides that their group wants to fund it, or they each want to do half and get it done. It's not going to cost them, because they're going to be the guinea pigs, to have this installed and have it done in their
Oh,
location.
you mean what would their cost be when we install it?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yes.
all. That's all left to negotiations. That's just like figuring out equity and everything else. Obviously, we want to make sure we make some money on the application, but it doesn't have to be what it will be for a non-partner getting it installed. Of course,
Right.
the benefits are extreme. Once this is operational, and again, when we're talking about R&D, research and development, we don't want to do something that's so top heavy in code and AI and all this other stuff. It's a dizzy array of things that we could really involve ourselves with on the engineering front. What we want to do is we want an application that is compact, modular, and repeatable. Every time we go to put a system in, we keep running into new challenges. There's something we didn't do right. We want to design and the focus and the approach that we're taking here is to make sure this is so simple, so easy that when we're training our people to go deploy and install these systems, you have teams coming out. We'll hire a local excavator to dig. We'll have a foundation guy. We'll have our engineers working with an engineer locally and say, here's what we're trying to build. We go put the engineering drawings to it. We're going to do all that in-house. We're going to get a civil engineer locally to work with us. And we're going to begin pouring the walls and setting infrastructure. By the way, water's an imminent danger to a structure like this. We have to have multiple pumping systems involved. We want at least 3 times redundant on separate power so that if one goes out, the other 2 or 1 will still be able to operate. So those are the kind of approaches that we're going to take. But for anyone investing in this, obviously, if they have a need for parking themselves, we can make that as part of the negotiations. And it won't be like you went and bought it from a third-party company that claims they had an off-the-shelf solution, because it's never going to be that, right? Because they've made their systems way too complicated. And the maintenance, we want a system that's so simple, the maintenance is just if you look at how our system was designed, the skids can be replaced and they're interchangeable. You take one out and throw a couple of more in there, and it just stacks the skids, and the skids get deployed for every car that gets added. But if there's no car there, all the wasted space you see here, the skids have to be reordered and repacked. It's just no reason to even do that. You only put a skid in there if there's a car in there on that skid. The skids will be stacked compactly. They're only 4 inches thick, right? They're 7 feet wide and they're 17 feet long. And so when a car comes in, a skid is placed there, and then the car drives in on top of the skid. The garage door doesn't even open unless the skid is in place, ready to go. So this would be the skid right here. And again, what's not depicted here is you got ground at this level. Everything you see in blue right here is below grade, right? And this is the concrete right here, and these are the walls. And again, up top could be condos up here, restaurants, whatever we want to do, or we can build going further back. So we don't have to worry about the structure being just cars. It can be, it's designed to be modular. So if we wanted to add restaurants, Starbucks, whatever, we can do that. When they come into, to have their car parked, they basically walk through this little door right here. Might be a little hard to see. See this door right here, the opening. So that door it's a sliding glass door that was shut. And then once the garage door is shut, like on this side, how the garage door is shut, you go in on this side, you come out on this side. If it's a busy, like a game day, both can be used for cars to go in. And then after the game is over, both can be used for cars to come out. So it really just depends on what's going on. But you design a system that will take all of that in consideration. In here is like a little waiting room area. So no one has to be outdoors in the cold waiting for their car, or if it's raining. But yeah, this is, we think we have a really clever system. And again, the R&D that needs to be done is pretty straightforward. And a lot of this stuff is off the shelf, but a lot of stuff we're going to have to kind of home grow it and design it and build it ourselves. The good thing here in Detroit is we have all the machinist shops, thousands of them, and anything we need to make that's specific or robotic, it's being done right here anyway. So we just call upon our friends that can help us with that. Another thing, Las Vegas is having extreme issues with parking, and the way the parking lots are designed today, they're probably, if you take in account the size of those parking structures, some of them are millions of square feet, each one. We could literally double or triple the amount of cars they can get in the same space. And because this is modular, we may be able to work out a way where we can help them with their parking problems, because the new casinos are going to be coming in. They're going to be tearing casinos that are 30 years old are being torn down now. Anything outside of 20 years is old in Vegas. And so we already know that they'll be ready to build new parking structures, and we can help them with that challenge. And that because this is scalable, it doesn't care if it's 2,000 or 36 cars. We'll be able to scale to from the lowest number all the way up to the highest number. So we think this is a really big opportunity. And those casinos, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to do each one of those in our solution, of which half of that will be profit, and because they're not charging for parking, we'd have to work a different kind of deal with them. We couldn't give it to them like the other way we were discussing, where we take a partnership with them after they pay their money. So a good solution is a good solution, especially if you're saving the money and you're parking cars. Another thing is, we think we could park the time it takes for somebody to pull in, park their car, hop out of their car. They don't need to close the windows because nobody's going to be in the structure. They don't have to worry about anybody. They don't have to worry about theft. I know we kind of sort of got off topic and talked about the rats, but we'll be able to control rodents in this environment, or any other pests, bugs, the whole nine. But yeah, it's going to be real interesting, and I really would like to know if you guys have any comments or any thoughts. But $5 million is a small chunk of change compared to what it is we'll be ready to do. And the other thing is, these structures are not permanently placed. When we put one in, they can come out in 1 day's worth of work. So once you put them in, it's not like they're tied to that location. If you decide you want to move it to another location, you can do that. We also believe the same structure will be able to be set up as a temporary parking solution. So if you just wanted to move it around from event to event, and if you can get a customer to pay you for that, it may be worth doing it. We haven't really looked into that. We just know that every time we go to events, parking is a nuisance, and somebody needs to figure it out. And we think this is a good solution.
Hans, what is your processing time per vehicle? In and
We think we can get cars in from the time the person pulls in to the time they're out of the car and it's already moving. Could be as quick as 1 minute. The time it takes for it to find a parking space could be anywhere from seconds to a few minutes, because it depends on how big the structure is and how filled it is. But when somebody wants to retrieve their vehicle, it should never take longer than 5 minutes. We heard of some parking structures that are taking up to a half an hour that are robotic. We don't understand that. We ran some simulations on NX. If you go on YouTube, you can look up NX. It's a German made. It's made by Siemens. It's a German, sort of like their version of AutoCAD, but we can run simulations in there. And so we wanted to figure out, how can we shuffle these cars around, given their weight, given their size, given the volume and the space that they take up, and how fast we can move these shuttles. These shuttles can move extremely fast. So we have two solutions for moving the shuttles. One is going to be pneumatic, where we use air. The other one is hydraulic. And another one is electric. Well, that's the third one, let's say. And so we can actually use combination of those. The reason why we like to get away from hydraulic is because we don't, in case seals blow, we don't want to lose. We don't want to be concerned about an environmental impact of our system having any type of failure.
that leads right into my next question of ongoing maintenance and tech support.
Yep. So we would have a team. Let's just say we put one in Denver. We would have a team that's always within a day's journey of getting to the location. But one of the issues is when they go into these robotic parking garages, it's not like a regular garage that's blocked by a car and you can tow the car out the way. If it stops working, it stops working. But this is why you have 2 paths in and 2 paths out. So that if one side fails for whatever reason, we can always redirect to the opposite door and have them enter and exit from that same location until the problem is corrected. But and typically we probably need a team of 2 to work on it. And you know, you don't need engineers, you just need a couple of well-trained technicians. And this is their job, just to travel around and make sure these things are maintained. And they may be doing a route where they're going Vegas, Denver, LA, Seattle, Salt Lake City. And they may just travel around in a transit van and make sure that everything, do the inspections and so on and so forth. The other thing is these if something is to fail, there will be cameras pretty much all throughout this structure. We'll be able to zoom in on where the problem is without even being in the structure. And if you know anything about electronics, if a motor is starting to fail, it starts to build up its resistance and it starts to heat up. We can monitor all of these items and make sure that everything is working optimally. And if something starts working outside of those standards, outside of the green zone, we can immediately jump on it before it becomes a problem. So the preventative part of this is a big part of how we're approaching the development and the design. We're not gonna get caught, you know, with our guard down. We want to make sure that we're proactive with our approach to this. But yeah, we think everything could be, because everything's modular, we should be able to take care of everything very quickly if there's a problem. If a skid or a shuttle goes bad, that shuttle can be taken offline robotically, or we can have a person come in there and service it to take it offline manually. So we'll have the option of doing both. As far as the steel structure goes, that's I-beams that are drilled, and we'll have a press with bolts going through them, and they'll come complete vertically. Each one of these 3 to 21 feet, but basically you just drop them, insert them in place by crane. Drop, 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 drop. And so if we want to expand, we can do so. But being underground, if you want to make it so big, then you need to dig the dimensions of the lot, pour the walls, put a top over the top of it. And then if you want to add these in later, you can just drop them in the ground at some point and then push them back. You just put them on rollers and push them back. So we kind of been thinking about how we could do things in case somebody decides later, man, we really need to be larger or expand more. We can do some of this stuff in advance, waiting for them to grow so that we can modularly stack or drop in new units to extend the amount of cars so we can increase the capacity of the parking facility.
Well, it stands to reason to me that the larger the structure gets, the longer it's going to take to get your car back or get your car in.
But also at that point, if the structure is so much larger, if we have the width dimension, we can actually, there's nothing stopping us from having 10 bays from cars going in and cars going out.
Oh.
So if it gets so much bigger, then we have another approach to take, and that's why we designed it this way.
Well, and that's the beauty of it being modular, because you don't have to expand in the beginning to a point that it's not cost effective. You build, and then something that is, again, cost effective, something that we can work with, and then as the demand grows, you add to it. And that's the easy part.
Impressive.
I'd like to, in the very beginning, you said you could build a structure, and maybe I misunderstood you. You could build a structure to hold 100 cars for $10 million, the structural part of it.
Yeah, we would build a structure and put our system in, and we probably could be around $5 million.
Oh, okay.
If we're to
Well,
sell this, if we're to sell this to a parking group that wants our application, say like in Chicago, we would sell it to them for 10 million. We build it out for them. It'd be end to end, 10 soup to nuts, $10 million, but we're going to take 30% equity of everything. After they spent their money and it's installed, our 30% will include maintenance, our 30% will include profit sharing. And so it will come off as a line item expense for items that, let's just say they had a mishap that had nothing to do with our system. That would be a line item that have to be covered, whether they have insurance or whatever the case may be. And so that line item wouldn't be that would be thrown on to the operational costs. And then we would then subtract the difference, and that would be then we would compute our 30% after that fact.
okay, so back to the beginning.
Yeah.
The hard costs exclusive of the land to build 100 of these parking spaces turnkey is basically $50,000 a space.
50,000 a space.
So then you got to get the land too. All right.
Sure. So, and again, if we looked at what our competitors would be doing, that cost would be much higher. It wouldn't work as well. And then in addition to that, they probably even couldn't even, if you put an order in today, you wouldn't have it done for 5 years. Because the way they design them, the way they build them, they basically are putting everything together on site. That's just not the way you want to do it. You want to have these things put together indoors in a controlled environment, and then you ship everything in. And as the shipping's coming in, the cranes are lowering it and dropping it into place. And then you'll have a team down there, locking everything down and ratcheting, running the bolts through and making the connections between the systems and connecting up the power in the end when everything's ready to go. But the system will pay for itself. If you consider what financing would be on a $10 million structure, you would pretty much be somewhere around $10,000 to $15,000 per million. So there's a lot of money to be made here. But the best thing to do is if somebody's got the cash and they're ready to build, we can put this in place and the system will pay for itself. And parking is one of these things. It's just an ongoing. Now, one thing I do want to mention, because it is a risk, I like to disclose the risks. We don't know if we're going to ever see another pandemic and people are going to just not show up to events or to work or whatever the case may be. But for some reason, the parking seems to be worse coming out of the pandemic than before the pandemic. So in San Fran, they just don't even know what to do anymore. Mass transit in the US has just been an abysmal failure. We never had a mass transit, and the mass transit shouldn't be even, it should be dealt with almost on a federal level, because the mass transit system, location to location, is just, it just doesn't work. Right. And so people are needing to use their cars, and people aren't even trusting people to be in a vehicle with them. Some people don't even want to catch flights because they don't want to have to sit next to a bunch of strangers. So they have an intimate relationship with their automobiles. And if you're one of those individuals, that's kind of like your baby. You want to make sure that nothing happens to it. And the good thing about these parking structure, nobody's going to crash into your car. Nobody's going to steal your tires or wheels off your car. Nobody's going to reach in and grab your cell phone. You could leave the windows down in your car and go park in the structure and don't have to worry about anything.
Well, that brings up something interesting. You look at the reports across the country, and there's a lot of break and grab in cars. What they do
Smash and grab.
Yeah, they they get in there, they take everything, and they're gone. In a structure like this, they can't do it.
Right.
Well, another thing, my sister-in-law is the general manager of the Strater Hotel. She pulls her hair out for employees. This doesn't require a whole bunch of employees to operate.
Well,
Yeah.
it doesn't require any employees.
Yeah, exactly.
Zero. The employees are on our side. So when we put this system in, nobody has to be there. Zero. If it needs some maintenance, the people that invested in it, they don't do the maintenance, we do. So we send our team out. And of course, the bigger we grow, the cost of paying employees goes to zero, basically. It's almost like a limit in calculus. It's asymptotic because after you're generating so much money, you don't even see the cost for the employee. And we don't need a bunch of employees to even do maintenance. You just need two. Two for each, when this location needs to be addressed, they'll have a report of what they need and they'll bring the components they need with them to address the situation. So imagine having skids inside of a vehicle, a bunch stacked up, and they're just driving around and they're just taking out bad skids and replace, with the new ones, the shovels. They're relatively lightweight, and that's it. There's not a whole lot of mechanical stuff to go around. They might have some bearing seals that need to be taken, and we're going to use the type of systems that don't require any lubrication. And if you notice, the structural steel is painted. It isn't really actually paint; it's a coating. And the coating, if you Google it, it's an elastomeric. And once we put it on, it's good for 30 years. As long as nothing's bumping into the steel, it's good for 30 years. And so we don't have to worry about rust or anything of that sort. It's basically like an anodizing process. So there's always going to be maintenance on mechanical systems, but this is one that you can feel good about because the maintenance that's going to be required it's very mechanically simple to address, and you don't need an engineer to maintain. You just get some well-trained techs, and you pay them well to do what it is that they do, and you give them a per diem because they're going to be running around taking care of these things. And so if we start off, we have one. We don't really need a team. We'll be able to handle that internally. But once we get to the point where there's dozens of these being deployed around North America, that's the point where we have to make sure we have more local teams, localized. They don't have to be exactly in that same city, but there needs to be a contingency in case there's a major failure point, which we don't anticipate. So, but each of these structures will have 3 different battery banks that will be below grade. The battery banks will be separated. They'll be inside of a concrete, basically tomb with ventilation, and we'll be able to liquid cool it to make sure that the batteries stay at an optimal temperature. And if for any reason the power goes out in from a storm or whatever else, it won't affect the operations of the facility.
Wow. Well,
Any
whatever.
other questions? Any other questions?
No, I just like to see some numbers and some, just whatever you've got to send that we can review.
Okay.
This is really amazing.
Okay.
Catherine, anything?
No, like you said, it's very amazing. And God bless you for doing this, because this is something that a lot of states need that nobody ever thought of.
Okay.